Hi everyone, I'm Airier, with the Overly Sarcastic Productions, Miscellaneous Myths, Ra's Secret Name, Anansi wins stories, the Tarasque, which I'm actually looking forward to because both FGO and D&D references in there that I'm kind of wondering which one got close to the truth, and then also right now confronting the fact that it's probably FGO. And finally, Kali tries to kill everything. That might be a Hawaiian one, but I'm not sure. Kali could also be Indian, in which case I think that might be the very first Indian myth that is being covered in that case. And I'm okay with that because I like more things I haven't heard of. Neat. And if it's not, also neat because I haven't heard of it. I know, win-win situation. More importantly, there's a link below to all the videos. Hit them up. Let's get started.
Before her name got bastardized for various reasons, Isis was mostly known for being an Egyptian
yeah, that would be a thing, wouldn't it?
goddess of magic and wisdom, known primarily for resurrecting Osiris and defending Ra during his nightly journey.
From the previous videos that I watched without audio on, I had to not actually.
Now, it's easy to overlook in the crazy, colorful menagerie that is the Egyptian pantheon overall, but Isis is actually ridiculously powerful, even by God standards.
Really?
She's worshipped in at least
oh, dear God. Major capacities. Mourner mourns the death of Osiris, restores dead souls as she did with Osiris. Wife of Osiris, linked with the mourner. Mother of Horus. Oh wow, 40k is making that sound weird. Sometimes ascribed motherhood over other gods as well, presides over childbirth, and sometimes determines fate, quality of life. Goddess of kingship, really? Horus being equated with the living pharaoh. Isis as a protector was also protector of the pharaoh and Egypt by extension because the kid, Goddess of magic. Magic allows her to revive Osiris and protect Horus, and she was widely considered to be cleverer than all the other gods. So mom knows best, and also everyone else is dumber. Nice. Sky goddess, often affiliated with rains in the Nile inundation, and is assigned domain over the sky. Universal goddess, later on, her dominion over the sky as all Egypt and pharaohs was expanded to include all other realms. At times, she was even assigned the role of being the supreme god, with all other gods being aspects of her. Yeah, it kind of fits. I was going to say, but that just means her kids are part of her. And then, you know what? No, that kind of fits. That actually is more fitting than it really should be. It kind of makes sense. Actually, never mind. It doesn't make sense. It makes absolutely no sense that nobody else has done that kind of thing because it's literally the mother goddess trope, but played as, I'm in charge, bitches. And frankly, that makes perfect sense to me, and I would never actually say anything otherwise because it legitimately is just kind of normal sounding. I'm probably very skewed by the male-centric Roman myths that are kind of fucked up. Huh.
7 capacities, one of them ascribing her power over the entire cosmos, and even the less extreme characterizations put her in charge of Egypt and the protection of the pharaoh. Needless to say, she was a pretty big deal. Now, the Egyptian pantheon is kind of known for reshuffling. Okay,
this is a very different art style. How long ago was this? 5 years. Wow. This is not the shading I've seen in a lot of videos, so this is a really unique period for Red to do this kind of art. Again, skin shading is usually something she just leaves off, except for in these tones, but it actually looks really nice.
Their gods pretty frequently, playing hot potato with the sun disk, stuff like that. Sometimes this involved myths and legends specifically.
Oh yeah, because he was the old man in that one before
explaining
retiring.
How the new god in charge.
You kids play nice. Osiris is in charge.
The power from the old god in charge. So when Isis rose to prominence in the 1st millennium BCE, the first thing to explain was how exactly she got so powerful, along with phasing out the obsolete older gods as they lapsed in popularity. So this is the story of how Isis took Ra's true name and the power that came with it. So as these stories often start, Ra is...
Oh, so the true name thing was actually an Egyptian concept? See, I've always heard true name. I thought it was more of just a modern fiction thing, but apparently that was in mythology. Huh. That's actually really neat.
The head god, and by far the most powerful dude around. The source of his power is...
His personality was part of it. His name, his heart, his shadow, and his vital spark. Huh. That's an interesting divine of it.
Ren, or his name, a concept so important in ancient Egypt that it was considered to be one of the 5 components of the soul.
Is she playing Toto in the background with Ra? There's a joke in there, I'm missing it. Isis, and I can't read Egyptian. I sure like my omnipotence.
Now at this point, Isis is already pretty smart, but she wants to be smarter, and she knows the only way for her to gain power and wisdom is to take Ra's true name for herself. So as Ra rides his sunbark through the sky every day, he tends to drool a little on account of how old and senile he's getting. He's been a dominant...
I'm sorry, the drooling god is actually part of the myth? Or is that Red's interpretation? She's done that a few times, but on the other hand, Ra got a very interesting, well, I'm old and I need to retire type moment. Probably played differently in the original Egyptian, but I'm not going to read that.
God in the pantheon for
I can barely
almost
read
2,000
English.
years at this point, so it's not exactly surprising he's getting a little long in the beak. Anyway, Isis collects some of the divine drool and mixes it with dust to make clay.
He was accurate.
She then sculpts this clay into a cobra and sends the little dude after Ra. So as Ra approaches the gates of night, the cobra strikes and bites him on the ankle, instantly.
And considering how many snakes were involved, this is probably not even that big of a deal for him.
Pumping him full of venom. This freaks everybody out because Ra is the creator of all things, and it shouldn't be possible for anything of his creation to hurt him.
Oh, never mind. Apparently it is. Ra's drool contained trace amounts of his power. Magic Cobra also containing trace amounts of the power.
The trick here is that the cobra contained a large fragment of his power without being under his control.
I do not get it. Why is... I think it's Bless the Rains out in Africa. Bless the Rains. It's a god in Africa because Egypt is in Africa. That's the joke. That feels like low-hanging fruit. Oh my... I'm just moving on. Moving on.
So he's basically being hurt by himself. So Ra freaks out and summons all the gods that have...
Unless you squeeze out a baby in the next 10 minutes, I can't help you. How dare you disrespect your king thusly? Don't make me sick my other eye on you. Oh yeah, you skim it.
Medical or healing magic, but none of them can find a way to neutralize the venom. This is, of course, when Isis slides into frame and offers to help. At this point, she's already...
Isis, thank me. Oh yeah, she's the god. Now show these quacks how it's done.
Already considered to be the dominant goddess of magic and medicine, but despite her qualifications, she tells Ra that the only way that she...
Ow. Rough, but I'm sure I could cure you with the power of your true name.
Can help him is if he gives her his true name. What? This might even be true, considering that the venom is actually Ra's own power. So Ra rattles off all of his many titles.
I literally can't fix you if you don't tell me. Oh, and you can see that he's sweating right here. Because he's trying to give all the titles and not his actual name.
To try and throw her off, but Isis is like, come on, man. So with no other option, he goes off with Isis and gives her his true name. Isis uses this power to heal him, with the added bonus that she's now the most powerful god in the pantheon and can use her magic to do just about anything. This crazy divine usurpation plot would be the highly dramatic, inciting conflict of any number of high fantasy evil god queen plotlines. Except
Ra was already retired, which probably makes it a little easier on him.
And if Isis weren't actually a really nice goddess who only uses...
Have a safe childbirth, ma'am. And then Ra's just kind of annoyed back there.
...her newfound omnipotence responsibly. Dodged that bullet, I guess.
That could have been me! It's gotta be because she was completely angry and not responsible. Yeah, and that had to be weakened. And next up we have Anansi wins stories. 1, I didn't know you can win stories. 2, that name. I'm assuming this is one of maybe the African gods, in which case, neat. The few times, actually the only time so far Red's covered them, was a really cool story, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
Anansi is a pretty well-known god, all things considered. He originates with the Asante people in modern-day Ghana, and a lot of his folktales were carried to the New World through, well, the same way a lot of people from West Africa were.
Watch
Anansi
American
is a
Gods,
spirit, a small, fragile spider who habitually thwarts vastly more powerful enemies and accomplishes great feats through cunning alone, no strength required. His motivations are almost always selfish, and he's...
Most commonly documented motivation: boredom, laziness, fussiness, the existential terror of death. He's just like me, for real, for real. Yeah, I'm thinking of the meme from Chainsaw Man. It's in my head, I can't get rid of it.
Pretty morally neutral, but everyone loves an underdog, and considering the circumstances of the people who brought his stories over, it's not too surprising that his theme of a disadvantaged hero surviving and overcoming powerful enemies got so popular. His certainly weren't the only African folktales that came to the New World, but they were the majority of the ones that really stuck. Anansi has a lot of folktales, usually involving him messing with people and skillfully evading the consequences, but one of the first things Anansi is credited with is actually pretty meta. So this is the story of how Anansi became the god of stories. So Anansi is bored, and figures out the reason why he's bored is that there aren't any stories, at least no accessible ones. See, the sky god Nyame is the god of stories, but he's hoarding them like a jerk, so Anansi has no access to free entertainment.
Okay, not gonna lie. Just kidding, we are vegetarian. Ha, nice. I don't recognize that line. Wait. Oh, that's from Black Panther, the first one. Yeah, that actually was a good line. Also, from what I heard, that was ad-libbed as well, in which case... Damn!
Anansi decides this will not stand and goes to Nyame to ask for ownership of all the world's stories so he can distribute them more freely. Or maybe just keep them all to himself. He hasn't decided yet. So Nyame is willing to give him the stories, but in exchange, Anansi has to do 4 things for him. He has to capture and bring him the...
Okay, what? Oh, I just got what he's a spider at... Not anthropomorphized? That's the word, anthropomorphized. Because he has all the extra eyes, the big eyes, so he looks like a human with spider characteristics. Him. All right, little guy, if you're going to be serious, or if you're serious, you're going to have to prove yourself. Do I? Wait, let me try that again. What?
Willing to give him the stories, but in exchange, Anansi has to do 4 things for him. He has to capture and bring him the 4 most dangerous creatures. The Umboro hornets, Onini the giant python, Osebo the leopard, and Moatia the invisible fairy. Anansi accepts the challenge and charges off to start catching them all. To start with, Anansi grabs 2 gourds, fills one with water, and dumps it all over the hornet's nest. Then he starts yelling about
the first people who told this story were definitely laughing at someone who tried this. Oh no, sure is raining right now.
It's raining and they'd better get to safety if they don't want to get drowned. The hornets make a beeline for the empty gourd, and Anansi...
The heh was justified, but I will not forgive you for it.
Plugs it and takes it back to Nyame. Next up is Onini the python. For this, Anansi cuts down a long palm branch and starts pacing around Onini's house, muttering to himself. Onini's like, what's going on over here? And Anansi's like, well, see, I was arguing with my wife earlier. She says you're shorter than this branch. And I was like, no, he's totally longer, but now I'm not convinced. And Onini's like, oh, hell no, we're settling this right now. So Onini lays down by the branch, and Anansi's like, no, you still look a little short. Every time you move your head up, your tail, like, slips past the end of the stick. Tell you what, how about I tie you to the stick so we can know for sure? And Onini's like, that sounds like a great plan. So Anansi webs him to the branch and carries...
Because spider! Yeah. Oh my god. And just the random bit where she puts in the extra arms. I love this, though. This is so cute and fun.
For Osebo the leopard, Anansi digs a big hole and covers it with sticks and leaves, which sounds incredibly tropey and obvious until you remember Nyame has a monopoly on stories and the...
Because you wouldn't have the stories if you didn't... So people also wouldn't learn from anyone else because they never got the stories of it. Yeah, that actually is a really good point. You don't need to eat the Roadrunner. Just use the Acme funds to order pizza. Meet. And then there's just a snake watching TV.
The tropes thereof, and therefore Osebo is highly unlikely to be familiar with even the obvious classics. So Osebo falls in the hole. Nancy comes over like,
you okay, buddy? I fell in a hole. You sure did.
Like, need a hand, buddy? And ties down a nearby willow tree, then spins a rope and attaches it to the treetop. He lowers the web into the hole, and when Osebo ties it to his tail, Anansi cuts the webs holding the willow tree down so the whole thing springs back upright. Osebo gets all tangled up in the web, and Anansi carries him up to Nyame.
He just
For the
keeps
last
catching
task,
people.
Anansi carves a little puppet dude out of wood and covers it in gum. Then he makes this sweet yam paste, puts it in a little dish, and puts it in the puppet dude's lap. Then
cool detail to actually puppeteer things. Wow.
And he webs up the puppet and waits. Soon enough, Moatia pops up, lured in by the yam paste, and asks the puppet if she can have some. Anansi bobs the puppet's head a little bit, so Moatia digs in. When she's done, she's like, thanks, little dude. I said thanks, asshole. And punches it. This gets her hand stuck. Her next brilliant idea is to kick it. This gets her foot stuck. So
the best part is, this isn't even his fault. This is someone being rude and getting paid for it.
after thoroughly tar-babying herself, Moatia is well and truly stuck. And
shoot, I forgot the underdog wins. Because he's the only person who should get tropes. And he actually got
Anansi takes the whole mess back up to Nyame and claims all the world's stories for his own.
Wait, what did it say there?
And Anansi takes the whole mess back up to Nyame and claims all the world's
Tell TV tropes I said you're welcome. Oh my god, it's all the tropes, yeah.
Stories for his own.
And next up we have the Tarasque, which we're going to find out it's either an immortal monster that just eats things and can't be killed except for all the ways that it actually can kill, but that's just kind of metagaming. Or is it a giant tortoise that spins around a ton in reference to something maybe related to Godzilla and gets beat up by a very aggressive nun? We'll find out. And I'm still coming to terms with the fact that my initial interpretation is the aggressive nun beating up the turtle is probably more accurate. Yeah.
I realize this might not be the most relatable experience to pitch as an intro, but who here has read through the D&D Monster Manual? Being a classic sword and sorcery type game.
Red, you think that's not the most relatable? Why is the cat trying to get in? If there's any weird cuts, it's because the cat started chewing on the power line again. And yes, they do that. I don't know why. They seem to find electricity tasty and tingly. I have kitties who have very little self-preservation.
It's got all the bad guys you'd expect it to have.
Yep.
Orcs, zombies, dragons, fish people, stuff mostly ripped either from folklore, Tolkien, or Lovecraft, plus a handful of original creations to flesh out the roster. But unsurprisingly, as the installments continued and the source material got thinner on the ground, the monsters started getting weirder as the writers were forced to get more original. I mean, who can forget such creations as Cyborg Bear, or Evil Shrubbery, or It's Like a Dude, but he...
No, go back a second. I'm sorry, what was that?
Who can forget such creations as Cyborg Bear, or
Evil Shrubbery? How is this not the most popular monster ever? You have a very down-to-earth, low-key setting, and then suddenly shrubbery attacks, as opposed to normally where it's just an attack on your wallet. Now it's an attack on your body as well, because fuck shrubbery, and anyone who actually enjoys it, you are monsters. And this is like the perfect make-your-own setting device where you can make anything happen with, you don't know what's going on because it could be anything in the dark. You have to find out about it. It's like the perfect campaign for a different setting if you just want to go all to town. Why did I never know about this? I'm having a very strong reaction right now, and I'm standing by it, damn it.
Evil Shrubbery, or It's Like a Dude, but he glows, and his head is like floating, or It's Like a Different Dude, but he glows, and his head is floating, and also he's wearing a dress. But in terms of memorable monsters you'd think had to be original D&D creations due to sheer craziness, first place easily goes to the Tarasque, a colossal monster with a very bizarre visual design, who oscillates between sleeping for months on end and single-handedly carving a path of devastation.
Also, I just want to point out that the people who drew this guy have absolutely no idea what a predator looks like, because the eyes are on the side of the head, implying that it's not a predator, it's a prey beast, and it needs extra vision to get away from shit. But then in the lore, it is the alpha predator. It should have the eyes up front. And I think they have altered the design a few times to do that.
Through your unsuspecting game module. But surprise, surprise, this perfect engine of destruction is actually ripped straight from the pages of the folkloric history of southern France, and the originator of this beast is exactly who we're going to be discussing today. Now, the Tarasque is a classic medieval dragon, which means...
Oh, turtle, scorpion, body of an ox, legs of a bear, head of a lion. So like a chimera, but just French.
That it looks nothing like any self-respecting dragon should, and is instead a chimerical mashup of a half-dozen wildly incongruous animal characteristics barely masquerading as a functional life form. Despite its absolutely ludicrous character design, the Tarasque has managed to muster up enough narrative intimidation factor to make a major nuisance of itself and ravage its way through most of southern France with all the grace and subtlety of a politically charged YouTube comment. The nearby kingdom of Nerluc, which I...
How long ago was this? 5 years? Yeah, that'd be 2018. That was right around PewDiePie's Bridgegate, wasn't it? Oh. Oh, I was not expecting that reference.
Think is pronounced that way, has been trying its best to kill the Tarasque, or at minimum drive it away. But no number of knights in shining armor or big swanky catapult units are capable of halting its kaiju-esque rampage. But those of you with a cursory knowledge of kaiju movies know that the only way to defeat a beast of such biblical proportions is to either orchestrate a highly cinematic confrontation between it and a friendly monster of even more biblical proportions, or to introduce it to a lovely young lady with a propensity for screaming operatically in skimpy nightgowns. Regrettably, this story takes place prior to the invention of both opera and lingerie, so instead we're going to have to settle for the fully clothed and generally level-headed Saint Martha, who's
okay, so yeah, FGO was right. I was not expecting that, but I was also kind of completely expecting that. Patron saint of servants, travelers, maids, housewives, sister to biblical Lazarus, known wearer of clothes. Well, FGO got that part wrong.
Martha, who strolls into town just in time to witness the Tarasque's latest bout of shenaniganery and resolves to do something about it. So Saint Martha heads off to confront the Tarasque and resolves the matter in classic saintly fashion by slopping some holy water on that sucker and smacking him with a crucifix. The Tarasque, now thoroughly tame thanks to the healing power of Jesus, is led back to the town.
Seriously? She hit him with a stick. I mean, yeah, it's a crucifix, but let's be honest. Considering she was alive prior to Jesus dying, it's weird to consider her a saint. I mean, not so much a saint, but like a nun at this point, because I'm not sure the nun orders were actually created, so the veil is kind of weird now that I think about it. Unless that's just how people dressed at the time? I don't actually know. But she literally just like, no, bad kitty, bad. Hit it with a stick. Oh God, she Eric Cartmaned it. She went, no, bad kitty, mine. I don't know how to comprehend this other than, dear God, that actually is accurate, and I don't think that was intended by anyone, but it does fit. Oh, that is just weird.
At which point he is, of course, tragically killed by the frightened townspeople, presumably so the line, "'Twas beauty killed the beast," could become a thing 900 years earlier than expected. Anyway, Saint Martha is displeased at the frankly eminently reasonable reaction from the townsfolk and chastises them, who respond by converting to Christianity and renaming the town Tarasque in an attempt to make up for their reflexive monster-slaying response. Saint Martha later goes on to visit the picturesque Spanish town of Villajoyosa and single-handedly wipes out an invading fleet of Berber pirates by triggering a flash flood. So I guess violence is sometimes the answer after all.
Okay, that was the thing. It's like, oh, my vacation? Fuck all y'all in the ships. Wow. And last up, we have Kali tries to kill everything, and we get an Indiana Jones reference right off the bat. That was not... Because the movie where they kept shouting Kali. Okay, that makes more sense. Does that make it Indian? Whatever. Also, the Tarasque in D&D having a shell being slightly accurate to the initial myth of the one in France. Wait. The Tarasque is French. Oh my god, one of the most powerful monsters in D&D is a Frenchman. There's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm sure it ran away by now. It's a stupid joke, I'm
Wow. Who'd have ever guessed that this wasn't a fully accurate portrayal of Hindu worship? So Hinduism is often called the oldest religion on Earth, a description that actually...
I'm sorry, what?
Accurate portrayal
Also,
of
yeah,
Hindu
that's
worship.
horrible.
So Hinduism is often called the oldest religion on Earth, a description that actually seems to be true.
Oh.
And because of its antiquity and the fact that it's a synthesis of a large number of disparate traditions and practices from all over the Indian subcontinent, summarizing it concisely in the space of an entertaining intro paragraph is difficult, to say the least. In the broadest, most insultingly simplified terms, Hinduism focuses on how best to live one's life while simultaneously finding a way to escape samsara, the cycle of reincarnation. There's also the concept of maya, illusion, as a source of distraction from one's proper understanding.
Visualizing the fundamental concept of illusion is not easy. This was 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure they can just put up an image from Inception at this point and it would kind of fit.
Standing of their place in the universe. And there's also Brahman, which is this sort of ultimate universal...
Sufficiently meaningful representation not found. I mean, they're basically doing the galaxy brain image without the brain represent. No, they have a bit of a face behind it. Or it could just be a little bit of schmutz there that just looks like a nose. Yeah. Also, anyone else here heard Brahmin and immediately went Fallout 4? Or 3? Probably 3 because it's better. Or 3.5. Also known as New Vegas, but details. Yeah, that's where my mind went. It's completely wrong.
Principal thing, which is really hard to concisely define without sounding like a hippie or a cult leader, but it's kind of the unifying principal energy thing of the universe. There's also Shakti, which is a specifically feminine primordial cosmic energy thing that seems to play the same role as Brahman does in the versions that use it. Now, when it comes to the gods specifically, Hinduism has a system that sounds more complicated than it is. Basically, every god is an aspect of that primordial energy.
Brahman, specific aspects of Brahman, more specific aspects of Brahman. Loads and loads of very specific divine aspects of Brahman. Damn, those cows get everywhere.
Universe stuff, and most gods will be specific aspects of other.
There's the joke. That's why they call them Brahman, because it's a joke about Indian and cows. Are you fuck? That's literally the joke in Fallout why they call the cows Brahman. That is so stupid.
They're bigger gods. For example, Parvati is the gentle, nurturing, motherly aspect of cosmic universe goddess Shakti, Durga is the warrior aspect of Parvati, and Kali is the pissed-off warrior aspect of Durga. They're all usually treated as distinct goddesses, but at the same time, they're also all the same entity, taking increasingly specific forms. One other confusing element to all this is that because the Hindu gods are kind of fluid and mostly symbolic, their relationships with one another can also be pretty flexible from myth to myth. For example, the general rule is that Mother Goddess Parvati is the wife of Shiva, the destructive aspect of the Trimurti whose job it is to end the universe. But Kali, whenever she's around, is also characterized as Shiva's wife without this conflicting with Parvati's thing. So now that we've sort of barely...
So in other words, they got multiple names for multiple aspects, and it's actually something similar to Christianity with the 3-in-1 aspect. Granted, this is a lot more than 3-in-1. It's here's how many aspects, and they're all basically the same thing with different tendrils. I wonder if Cthulhu took mythos from that option.
Not really contextualize this. Today, let's talk a little bit about Kali and how she nearly danced the universe to death. Word of warning, there's about 500,000 variants on this story, with this being only one of them. Mythology is fun like that. Please be nice to my comment section. So our story begins with Durga and the Matrikas, a good name.
The Matrikas? Okay. And Munda? I'm not even going to try and say the names. I will fuck it up. Also, I respect the mustache. Nice.
for a band, fighting these dudes Chanda, Munda, and Raktabija, along with their obligatory army of faceless minions. Now these guys are Asuras, who are bad guy deities.
Oh, Asuras? I'm not even going to try and read that. Bad, power-seeking deities, mostly defied by their conflict with the Devas. This is the post-Deva, a Davidic definition. Before Agni and Indra were frequently classed as Asuras. Really? Huh. Devas, heavenly divine, excellence. The good guy deities, again, post-Vedic. What's pre-Vedic?
That make a habit of battling the Devas, who are the good guy deities. Raktabija specifically has a particularly annoying power that makes him significantly harder to manage than the others. Whenever a drop of his blood touches the earth, it pops out a duplicate of him.
What?
This makes fighting him extremely frustrating due to his continuously replenishing supply of bad guys.
And also, if you ever cut him, he just has an army backup. Oh, jeez, and I can see where he cut himself right there to do it.
In fact, it's so frustrating that the sheer force of Durga's pissed-off facial expression causes Kali to spontaneously manifest out of her forehead creases and start kicking ass.
Damn!
Now, Kali is a lot of things, but terrifying sums her up pretty well. As the physical embodiment of Durga's wrath, she's unsurprisingly lacking in chill, and after immediately murdering Chanda...
Yep, it just heads gone. Nope. That is moderately terrifying.
Munda with minimal difficulty, she starts up on taking down Raktabija, first by eating all of his clones and most of the rest of his army, and then by juicing him like an orange. This, unsurprisingly, kills him pretty thoroughly, and with Kali drinking all his blood before it can reach the ground, he's left tragically cloneless and is therefore dead for real. So with that, the battle's over and the Devas have won, but on...
Well, good work, Oh my god, I love this, how she's just there, and this one's all rage, and they're just freaky. I was like, oh, are we the bad guys?
Unfortunately, Kali, as a manifestation of Durga's unstoppable rage, doesn't exactly chill out just because the battle's done. Instead, she starts wreaking widespread havoc, murdering basically everything she comes across and dancing on the bodies of the dead. Her victory dance / murder party gets so intense that it starts threatening the universe itself.
Shiva, you've got to stop your wife. Rafai's right over there. Your other wife! Oh my god,
At which point the rest of the Devas decide it's time to call in Shiva to sort this all out. So Shiva surveys the situation and decides that the only way to get through to his scary wife is through a dramatic heroic sacrifice. So he dives...
The only solution is... Wait, what?
...under her foot mid-stomp to heroically shield the ground from her onslaught. When Kali realizes she just boogied all over her husband, she bleps in surprise and immediately calms down and...
Blept in surprise... The tongue out. Oh my god. Oh yeah.
Stops destroying the universe, which is good, because as established, that's Shiva's job.
So unless I missed something, those were the first myth, all those combination myths, that Red covered for Hinduism, and honestly, I want her to do more. I also want her to do more Welsh, and more Egyptian, and more Greek, and more Norse, and more African, and you can see where I'm going with this. There's really nothing I don't want her to cover when it comes to myths. I just love all of this, and we got more of the African myths. Anansi is actually really cool and super meta, and even the little thank you to TV tropes at the end. Nice. But also, I love that she was pointing out the meta options and all the references to random shows that were out that the God of Stories was seeing and hoarding. So you can see, like, oh, he basically has the only subscription to everything. I hate how the first thing I said to talk about hoarding something with subscriptions. That makes me feel pain. Could I have just said something easy like DVDs or VHS or A-tracks or MP3s or something other than that? Oh, God, I'm just judging myself right now. Yeah. That bit of a disturbing nature aside, I really like getting into this. I don't know a lot about Hindu myth, except for what was in FGO, and I initially thought that was absolutely trash, kind of like the Tarasque stories were, but as Red has continually broken me to understand, FGO puts thought into the characters, so maybe I know a bit about Indian and Hindu myths in general at this point. That still sounds weird, though. Huh. Yeah. That said, next up, Dionysus. I wanted to do it in this video, then I realized I have to adult in 5 minutes ago. I should have recorded earlier. That's on me. Well, more importantly, I need to run away screaming now because I am very late and I need to fix that. You guys know the deal. Link below video. Hit it up. And I'll see you in the next one. Adios.